أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بئس ما اشتروا به أنفسهم. Evil is that share of the worldly life for which they have sold their souls. That's the Jews. أن يكفروا بما أنزل الله بغيا. They're disbelieving out of transgression in what Allah has revealed. أن ينزل الله من فضله على من يشاء من عباده. Their envy that Allah would reveal from His generosity to whomsoever He wills of His slaves, like Muhammad, because those Jews felt that the revelation should have come upon one of them and not to someone else. They didn't like that Muhammad got revelation, and they didn't like that the Muslims got revelation, meaning the followers of Muhammad. فَبَاءُوا بِغَضَبٍ عَلَى غَضَبٍ. So they became deserving of torture for disbelieving in Muhammad, above their being deserving of torture for previous blasphemy, of neglecting the Torah and disbelieving in Jesus, and saying that Uzair is the son of God, and other things, other blasphemy. And they were already kuffar before Prophet Muhammad came. And then when Muhammad came, they disbelieved in him and they added kufr to their kufr.
Yeah, so they was already kuffar because at that point they had already disbelieved in Isa alayhi salam.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm. And they committed tashbih. They likened Allah to the creations. So they were believing that Allah was a man, or having a shape and having children and things like that. And they were and they had perverted laws in the Torah too. They did have, by the time Prophet Muhammad came, they did have authentic copies of the Torah, but they also had perverted ones too. So they had, some of them had perverted the Torah, and some of them still had authentic copies. وَلِلْكَافِرِينَ عَذَابٌ مُهِينٌ. And for the unbelievers is a humiliating torture. وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ آمِنُوا بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ قَالُوا نُؤْمِنُ بِمَا أُنزِلَ عَلَيْنَا. And when it was said to them, believe in all that Allah has revealed, they said, we believe only in what Torah was revealed to us. وَيَكْفُرُونَ بِمَا وَرَاءَهُ وَهُوَ الْحَقُّ. And they disbelieve in what is beyond that, while it is the truth, or though it is the truth. مُصَدِّقًا لِمَا مَعَهُمْ. The truth verifying what they have. So if they disbelieve in what complies with the Torah, they disbelieve in their very own Torah. قُلْ فَلِمَ تَقْتُلُونَ أَنْبِيَاءَ اللَّهِ مِنْ قَبْلُ إِن كُنْتُمْ مُؤْمِنِينَ. Say, Muhammad, why then did you kill Allah's prophets before Muhammad, if you were indeed believers in the Torah that forbids killing prophets? The Jews at the time of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam are being addressed about what their ancestors did of slaying prophets. But the verse is posed as if they did the killing because they approved of what their ancestors did. وَلَقَدْ جَاءَكُمْ مُوسَى بِالْبَيِّنَاتِ ثُمَّ اتَّخَذْتُمُ الْعِجْلَ مِنْ بَعْدِهِ وَأَنْتُمْ ظَالِمُونَ. And by God, Moses did come to you with the clear miracles. Then you took the calf as an object of worship in his absence, while you were unjust for doing so. And the story of the calf is in Surah Taha in detail. So we'll save the details for then. And we talked about it a little bit last time. And the clear miracles of Moses were like his hand, his illuminated hand. He would pull his hand out of his collar and it was lit. in contrast to his darker complexion, and then he would put it back and it would come back regular again. And his staff, which turned into a dragon or a serpent, and splitting the sea, and the other signs, the river turning into blood, and the locusts and the lice and all sorts of things that they witnessed. وَإِذْ أَخَذْنَا مِيثَاقَكُمْ وَرَفَعْنَا فَوْقَكُمُ الطُّورَ. And when we took your covenant, and when you refused to accept the Torah, we commanded the angel to raise over you the mountain, to drop it upon you, when you had refused to accept the Torah. So we spoke about that previously. خُذُوا مَا آتَيْنَاكُمْ بِقُوَّةٍ. We said, accept what Torah we have given you with firm resolve, because they didn't want to take it. وَاسْمَعُوا. And hear what you are commanded to do. Meaning, accept and obey. Hear and obey. قَالُوا سَمِعْنَا وَعَصَيْنَا. They said, we heard what you said, and we disobey your command. وَأُشْرِبُوا فِي قُلُوبِهِمُ الْعِجْلَ بِكُفْرِهِمْ. And their hearts were made to drink from the love of the calf because of their disbelief. They were made to drink of it until it overcame them and fused with their hearts. They became infatuated or obsessed with it. Because of their disbelief, according to Nasafi, that's their inclination to liken God to the creations. قُلْ بِئْسَ مَا يَأْمُرُكُمْ بِهِ إِيمَانُكُمْ إِن كُنتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. Say sarcastically, O Muhammad, evil is that worship of the calf which your supposed belief in the Torah commands you, if you are believers. قُلْ إِن كَانَتْ لَكُمُ الدَّارُ الْآخِرَةُ عِندَ اللَّهِ خَالِصَةً مِّن دُونِ النَّاسِ فَتَمَنَّوُا الْمَوْتَ. Say, Muhammad, if the abode of the afterlife is especially for you Jews to Allah, from amongst all the people, then you should yearn for it. So wish for the death that transports you to the afterlife, if you are truthful. In kuntum sadiqin, if you are truthful. وَلَن يَتَمَنَّوْهُ أَبَدًا بِمَا قَدَّمَتْ أَيْدِيهِمْ. And they will not wish for it ever, because of what bad deeds their hands have sent forth. That's a miracle of the Quran. This is a miracle of the Quran because it tells of the unseen. Not a single one of them have ever dared to say, I wish for death. Yani to challenge the Quran, to defy the Quran. Allah says, وَلَن يَتَمَنَّوْهُ أَبَدًا. They will never wish for death. So all of one of them has to do is step forward and say, I wish for death. And then he would prove the Quran wrong. And none of them have ever done so. بِمَا قَدَّمَتْ أَيْدِيهِمْ. Because of what bad deeds their hands have sent forth. For the bad deeds that they have prepared for themselves in the afterlife. وَاللَّهُ عَلِيمٌ بِالظَّالِمِينَ. Their bad deeds like disbelieving in the Prophet and perverting the book and other things. And Allah is knowledgeable of the unjust blasphemers, and thus He shall recompense them. And that is a threat. وَاللَّهُ عَلِيمٌ بِالظَّالِمِينَ. They are under threat by that. Allah knows about them. وَلَتَجِدَنَّهُمْ أَحْرَصَ النَّاسِ عَلَى حَيَاةٍ وَمِنَ الَّذِينَ أَشْرَكُوا. And by God, you will certainly find them the most covetous of the people over long life. More covetous than those who committed paganism. Yani they love life more than the pagans love life. It is expected that the pagans would be covetous of life, living in the dunya, because they don't believe in the afterlife. So they would be attached to the dunya. So for the Jews who know of the afterlife and they know of the reward and punishment, to be more covetous of this life than those who see that there is nothing more to this life, there is nothing more than this life, is extremely blameworthy. يود أحدهم لو يعمر ألف سنة وما هو بمزحزحه من العذاب. يود أحدهم لو يعمر ألف سنة. Every one of those Jews would love had only he been granted life for 1,000 years. وما هو بمزحزحه من العذاب أن يعمر. And being granted long life is not what will ward off the torture from him. وَاللَّهُ بَصِيرٌ بِمَا يَعْمَلُونَ. And Allah is seer of what they do and shall recompense them. Ibn Surya, the rabbi, asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or Umar, about which angel brings down the revelation. He replied that it was Gabriel. Ibn Surya then said, he is our enemy because he brings the punishment with him. Had it been Michael or another, we would have believed because he brings fertility and security. Then the following was revealed. قُلْ مَنْ كَانَ عَدُوًّا لِجِبْرِيلَ فَإِنَّهُ نَزَّلَهُ عَلَى قَلْبِكَ بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. Say, whoever was an enemy of Gabriel, then let him die from fury, for surely he it is who brought the Quran down on your heart by Allah's command, by Allah's permission, meaning by his command. So the way it's worded in the Arabic, قُلْ مَنْ كَانَ عَدُوًّا لِجِبْرِيلَ. Say, whoever was an enemy of Gabriel, فَإِنَّهُ نَزَّلَهُ عَلَى قَلْبِكَ. Then he is the one who brought it down on your heart, O Muhammad. So there's something implied there. Whoever was an enemy of Gabriel, then let him die from fury. Gabriel is the one who brings the revelation down on you, O Muhammad, by the permission of Allah. مُصَدِّقًا لِمَا بَيْنَ يَدَيْهِ. Verifying what heavenly books came before it. وَهُدًى وَبُشْرَى لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ. And as guidance and glad tidings of paradise for the believers. مَنْ كَانَ عَدُوًّا لِلَّهِ وَمَلَائِكَتِهِ وَرُسُلِهِ وَجِبْرِيلَ وَمِيكَالَ. Whoever was an enemy of Allah and his angels and his messengers, and especially of Gabriel and Michael, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ عَدُوٌّ لِلْكَافِرِينَ. Then surely Allah is an enemy of the unbelievers. So here, whoever was an enemy of Allah and his angels, the mentioning of the angels there already includes Jibreel and Mikael. So then to mention them in particular afterwards, then that emphasizes the meaning. And here it says Jibreel wa Mikael. So you could say Mikael, or you could say Mikael. And you could say Jibreel, and you could say Jabrail. And you could say his name in other ways too. فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ عَدُوٌّ لِلْكَافِرِينَ. Then surely Allah is an enemy of the unbelievers. And what they say is here, al-kafirin, the unbelievers, that's mentioned here in the ayah. It came where the pronoun would be expected. Here, there's a footnote. The explicit designation as kafirin, unbelievers, coming in the spot where the mere pronoun would be expected, yani their enemy, meaning what would be expected, like had this been outside of the Quran, it would be expected that it would be said, then Allah is their enemy. Whoever was the enemy of Allah and his angels and his messenger and Gabriel and Michael, then Allah is their enemy with the pronoun. But instead of saying a pronoun, their enemy, he named them. He described them specifically. Allah is the enemy of the disbelievers. This is for emphasis and for clarifying exactly what they are. This proves that Allah takes them as enemies because of their blasphemy, and that taking the angels as enemies is blasphemy, like taking the prophets as enemies is blasphemy. Whoever takes them as enemies, Allah takes them as an enemy. Ibn Abbas reported that Ibn Surya said to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "You have not brought anything familiar to us, and no ayah by which we should follow you was revealed to you." So Allah refuted him. وَلَقَدْ أَنزَلْنَا إِلَيْكَ آيَاتٍ بَيِّنَاتٍ. And we swear, we have certainly revealed to you clear signs of your prophethood, O Muhammad. وَمَا يَكْفُرُ بِهَا إِلَّا الْفَاسِقُونَ. And none disbelieve in them but the nefarious blasphemers from the people of the book. أَوَكُلَّمَا عَاهَدُوا عَهْدًا نَبَذَهُ فَرِيقٌ مِّنْهُمْ. And is it that they disbelieve in the clear signs, and whenever they pledge a promise to believe in the Prophet when he appears, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or to not give assistance to the idolaters against him, a party of them casts it aside? Yani that's in reference to some of the covenant that they had in the Torah. They had the covenant in the Torah to support the last prophet when he comes, not to conceal his identity, and not to support the pagans against him. And they did contrary to all of that. بَلْ أَكْثَرُهُمْ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. In fact, most of them do not believe in the Torah and do not see breaking the covenant as a sin. وَلَمَّا جَاءَهُمْ رَسُولٌ مِّنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ مُصَدِّقٌ لِمَا مَعَهُمْ. And when there came to them Muhammad, a messenger from Allah, verifying what they have, نَبَذَ فَرِيقٌ مِّنَ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابَ كِتَابَ اللَّهِ وَرَاءَ ظُهُورِهِمْ. A party of those Jews who were given the book through the Torah book of Allah behind their backs, by not practicing it, not believing in Muhammad. كَأَنَّهُمْ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. As if they know not what it contains of Muhammad's description. وَاتَّبَعُوا مَا تَتْلُو الشَّيَاطِينُ عَلَى مُلْكِ سُلَيْمَانَ. And the Jews at the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, following their ancestors, followed the devil's tilawah of sorcery and blasphemy from the time of Solomon's reign. So the tilawah here, I have a footnote, their practice, their study, their relating and transmission, or their reciting, all of that was said about the meaning of tilawah here. That's from Tabari. At-Tabari said that Allah did not specify by anything definitive what that tilawah actually means. These are all the possibilities that it could mean. So Allah knows best what is that tilawah. That's why it's not translated here. وَاتَّبَعُوا مَا تَتْلُو الشَّيَاطِينُ عَلَى مُلْكِ سُلَيْمَانَ. And they followed the devil's tilawah of sorcery and blasphemy from the time of Solomon's reign. وَمَا كَفَرَ سُلَيْمَانُ وَلَكِنَّ الشَّيَاطِينَ كَفَرُوا. And Solomon did not blaspheme or practice magic. Rather, the devils blasphemed, teaching the people magic. So here, he didn't blaspheme and he didn't practice magic. This is a statement of defense for Solomon, or in defense of Solomon, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because the devils, the genies amongst the devils, they slandered him and accused him of sorcery that involves blasphemy. Yani is mentioned about the story of Solomon that after Solomon passed, some of the devils put a book or books of sorcery under his throne. And then they said to the people, Solomon only controlled you by sorcery. He wasn't a prophet. He was a wizard king. And then they dug up under his chair and they found books there. So Allah clears Solomon of that. يُعَلِّمُونَ النَّاسَ السِّحْرَ. Rather, the devils blasphemed, teaching the people magic. They blasphemed as the people's magic teachers, seeking to misguide them. وَمَا أُنزِلَ عَلَى الْمَلَكَيْنِ بِبَابِلَ هَارُوتَ وَمَارُوتَ. And teaching what was sent down to the two angels in Babylon, Harut and Marut. And there's famous story about Harut and Marut. None of the chains of these stories are true, are authentic. Yani it is said, famously reported in many books, that Harut and Marut fell in love with a woman and they forced her and they got drunk and they killed her, and other types of things mentioned in some different chains. All of these things that don't befit the status of angels in the first place. Angels are not males or females. They don't have sexual desire. They don't disobey Allah Ta'ala. So all of that is false. And also it is mentioned that Harut and Marut are amongst the common angels, not amongst the elite angels. But still, even being common angels, they would never disobey Allah and they would never do things that are reported about them in many tafsirs.
So what else is mentioned about them in general? That's about them being mentioned by name. Like what else is mentioned about Harut and Marut authentically?
What's correct about Harut and Marut is that Allah Ta'ala sent them to Babylon to show the people what magic is. Not for the people to practice magic, but just to educate the people so that the people know what it is. That's just like how we learn in our religion about many things. Like we learn even how to make wine, for example. I didn't know how to make wine before I became a Muslim. All you got to do is let the juice get old. And then it'll turn into wine. So what was the purpose of that? It's not so that I would drink the wine or so that any one of us would drink it, but so that we would know. So like that, they went and they taught the people magic, and they told them, as is going to be mentioned here, not to practice the magic and not to commit kufr. So that's what their mission was. وَمَا يُعَلِّمَانِ مِنْ أَحَدٍ وَمَا يُعَلِّمَانِ مِنْ أَحَدٍ حَتَّى يَقُولَا إِنَّمَا نَحْنُ فِتْنَةٌ فَلَا تَكْفُرْ. And they did not teach anyone until they said as advice, merely we are a trial, we are a fitnah, so do not blaspheme. فَيَتَعَلَّمُونَ مِنْهُمَا مَا يُفَرِّقُونَ بِهِ بَيْنَ الْمَرْءِ وَزَوْجِهِ. Then they would learn from them that by which they cause division between a man and his wife. That's some type of magic. So magic is haram. What is magic anyway? It is wicked words and wicked practices by which Allah will create a result. So people use that for something like this, to make someone fall out of love, or to make someone fall in love, or to harm people, to make them sick, or kill them, or make them lose their minds, or other things. وَمَا هُمْ بِضَارِّينَ بِهِ مِنْ أَحَدٍ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. And it is not they who harm by it anyone except by Allah's permission. As if to say, it is someone else. They're not the ones who harm by that it's someone else. Yani, they can't create any harm by that. Allah is the creator. They could not harm anyone by that except by Allah's permission, by His will. وَيَتَعَلَّمُونَ مَا يَضُرُّهُمْ وَلَا يَنفَعُهُمْ. And they learn what harms them in their religion and does not benefit them in the afterlife. Excuse me. And does not benefit them in the afterlife. وَلَقَدْ عَلِمُوا لَمَنِ اشْتَرَاهُ مَا لَهُ فِي الْآخِرَةِ مِنْ خَلَاقٍ. By God, and the Jews have certainly known, by God, indeed, whoever purchased it does not have in the afterlife any share of the garden. Meaning, whoever abandoned the book of Allah and took the magic instead does not have in the afterlife any share of the garden. وَلَبِئْسَ مَا شَرَوْهُ بِهِ أَنفُسَهُمْ لَوْ كَانُوا يَعْلَمُونَ. So evil is that price for which they sold their souls, had only they known. وَلَوْ أَنَّهُمْ آمَنُوا وَاتَّقَوْا لَمَثُوبَةٌ مِّنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ خَيْرٌ. And had only they believed in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Quran, and feared the torture of God, then certainly a reward from Allah is better than that by which they have sold their souls. لَوْ كَانُوا يَعْلَمُونَ. Had they but known. The Jews had a derogatory term, ra'ina. And when they heard the believers saying something like it to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they heard the believers saying a word that sounded like a profanity that they had. That amused them. So they took advantage and insulted the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam with their word. Allah exposed them. So that's more telling of the unseen. Allah said, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لَا تَقُولُوا رَاعِنَا. O those who have believed, do not say to the messenger, رَاعِنَا, take care of us. Not because it means something bad, but because it sounds like something that the Jews were saying that's inappropriate. وَقُولُوا انظُرْنَا. And instead say, انظُرْنَا, wait for us. Meaning, observe us. Meaning, take care of us by teaching us. وَاسْمَعُوا. And listen to what the messenger says, O believers. وَلِلْكَافِرِينَ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ. And for the Jewish unbelievers who insulted the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is a painful torture. ما يود الذين كفروا من أهل الكتاب ولا المشركين أن ينزل عليكم من خير من ربكم. Neither do those who disbelieved among the people of the book, nor the pagans, like for the good revelation to be sent down to you believers from your Lord. Due to their envy of you, they're seeing themselves entitled to it and not you. وَاللَّهُ يَخْتَصُّ بِرَحْمَتِهِ مَنْ يَشَاءُ. And Allah specifies by His mercy, or with His mercy, whomever He wills. His mercy being the revelation. He specifies with prophethood and guidance to the correct religion, whomever He wills. وَاللَّهُ ذُو الْفَضْلِ الْعَظِيمِ. And Allah is possessor of the great generosity of bestowing prophethood and guidance. And when it was that they criticized abrogation and said, look at Muhammad commanding his companions with something, then forbidding them from it. Today he says one thing and tomorrow he retracts. It was revealed, ما ننسخ من آية أو ننسها نأتي بخير منها أو مثلها. Whatever we abrogate of a verse with a judgment, with or without its recitation, or make forgotten, we bring better than it, by its judgment being easier or more rewardable, or we bring like it, and accountability and reward. أَلَمْ تَعْلَمْ أَنَّ اللَّهَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. Did you not know that Allah is over everything very powerful? So nasikh, abrogation, it has different cases. Allah Ta'ala, He abrogates rules and He abrogates text of the Quran. So, and He does that as He wills. So He might abrogate the rule and leave the ayah in the Quran to be recited, although the rule that has the ayah is abrogated. Or He could abrogate the ayah that has the rule and leave the rule instated. Or He could abrogate both of them. And that's the case. So abrogation has its own chapter. One would learn the details of abrogation in the science of usulul fiqh. Not fiqh, but usulul fiqh. And also you learn some abrogation in hadith science. But mostly it's in usulul fiqh. And sometimes the scholars differ about something being abrogated or not. So then they'll have different rules. And the reason why it says very powerful is because qadir is an emphatic form of qadir. Qadir means powerful. The qadir is the one who has qudra, who has power. So the qadir is the one who has a lot of qudra, very powerful. أَلَمْ تَعْلَمْ أَنَّ اللَّهَ لَهُ مُلْكُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Did you not know that Allah, to Him belongs the kingdom of heavens and earth? وَمَا لَكُم مِّن دُونِ اللَّهِ مِن وَلِيٍّ وَلَا نَصِيرٍ. And you do not have instead of Allah any ally to protect you, nor a supporter to fend off the torture from you. It was reported that Quraysh said, "O Muhammad, make Mount Safa become gold for us, or expand for us the land of Mecca." In this verse, we are forbidden from suggesting miracles like the people of Moses used to do. أَمْ تُرِيدُونَ أَن تَسْأَلُوا رَسُولَكُمْ كَمَا سُئِلَ مُوسَى مِن قَبْلُ. Or do you wish to ask your messenger for specific miracles, as Moses was asked before by the Israelites when they said, "Show us God plainly"? وَمَن يَتَبَدَّلِ الْكُفْرَ بِالْإِيمَانِ فَقَدْ ضَلَّ سَوَاءَ السَّبِيلِ. And whoever takes unbelief in exchange for faith, he has indeed strayed from the straight way of the path. Yani, they should not suggest miracles for the Prophet to do. Rather, they should believe in him when he comes and performs any miracles that he performs. It's mentioned in different spots in the Quran that that the people would ask for the Prophet to do particular miracles. That's the meaning of, in different spots of the Quran, when they would say, if only he would bring a sign. The meaning is a sign that we suggest. Because he did bring signs and they saw them. And that was what was done before. And Allah tells us in different spots in the Quran that had he given them a sign of their suggestion, they don't know the calamity if they reject it. Yani, that if they ask for a sign and then Allah give them exactly what they asked for and then they reject it after that, Allah will exterminate them. So those people of Mecca, they used to ask for particular signs and then Allah didn't give it to them. But some people he did, like the people of Salih. They told Salih exactly what they wanted him to do. They said, bring a camel out of this boulder and a baby camel too. And then when he did it, then they believed at first and then they killed the camel and then Allah exterminated them. And even in the story of Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wassalam, when they fasted for 30 days, and then the people said to Isa, ask your Lord to bring down a table spread from the sky. So Isa, at first, he told them, don't suggest the miracles. He was afraid for them because he knew that if they suggest that and then it comes down for them and then they don't believe in it, that Allah would punish them. So he tried to deter them from that, but they insisted. And that has its own story. We'll come to it, inshallah. وَدَّ كَثِيرٌ مِّنْ أَهْلِ الْكِتَابِ لَوْ يَرُدُّونَكُمْ مِّن بَعْدِ إِيمَانِكُمْ كُفَّارًا. Many of the people of the book would love to revert you believers back after your faith to unbelievers. حَسَدًا مِّنْ عِنْدِ أَنفُسِهِمْ مِّن بَعْدِ مَا تَبَيَّنَ لَهُمُ الْحَقُّ. Out of extreme envy from the wickedness of their selves, after the truth in the Torah about Muhammad became clear to them. فَاعْفُوا وَاصْفَحُوا حَتَّى يَأْتِيَ اللَّهُ بِأَمْرِهِ. So pardon their ignorance and hostility, and disregard retaliating until Allah brings about His command to fight. Pardon them meaning leave them, do not react to them, until Allah brings the command to fight. Inna Allah ala kulli shay'in qadir. Surely Allah is over everything very powerful, and thus can bring the revenge upon them. Wa aqimu as-salata wa atu az-zakah. And observe the prayer and pay the zakah. وَمَا تُقَدِّمُوا لِأَنفُسِكُم مِّنْ خَيْرٍ تَجِدُوهُ عِندَ اللَّهِ. And whatever you prepare for yourselves of good, you shall find its reward with Allah. إِنَّ اللَّهَ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ بَصِيرٌ. Surely Allah is of what you do seer, and shall reward you. The Jews of Medina and the Christians of Najran disputed before the Prophet ﷺ, and each group said that its own would enter paradise. وَقَالُوا لَن يَدْخُلَ الْجَنَّةَ إِلَّا مَنْ كَانَ هُودًا أَوْ نَصَارًا. And they said, none shall enter the garden but whoever was a Jew or a Christian. They meant, each one meant for his own group. The Jews were saying, none but a Jew. And the Christians were saying, none but a Christian. Tilka amaniyuhum. Those desires that no good shall come to the believer from his Lord, that they could return you to disbelief, and that none shall enter the garden but them, are their empty hopes. Tilka amaniyuhum. Tilka, those are amaniyuhum, their hopes. So maybe it might appear to someone that this part here refers to their saying that no one will enter the garden but them. But according to Nasafi, he is linking what's before that to this also. Because what did they say? They said they didn't like for any goodness to come to a believer, to the believers from their Lord. That's in Ayah 105. And they wished that they could return the believers to disbelief. And they said that none shall enter the garden but them. So according to Nasafi, all of this is their empty hopes. قُلْ هَاتُوا بُرْهَانَكُمْ إِن كُنتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. Say, bring your evidence if you are truthful in your claim. Or perhaps it means bring your argument. It still would mean bring your evidence. بَلَى مَنْ أَسْلَمَ وَجْهَهُ لِلَّهِ وَهُوَ مُحْسِنٌ فَلَهُ أَجْرُهُ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِ. Indeed, someone else shall enter the garden. Whoever submits himself to Allah while being a good doer, then for him is his reward from his Lord. Being a good doer means he believes in the Quran and he's a monotheist. وَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. Then for him is his reward from his Lord, and they shall have no fear in the afterlife, nor shall they grieve over what they left behind in the worldly life. وَقَالَتِ الْيَهُودُ لَيْسَتِ النَّصَارَى عَلَى شَيْءٍ. And the Jews say, the Christians are not upon anything. They say the Christians' religion is nothing. وَقَالَتِ النَّصَارَى لَيْسَتِ الْيَهُودُ عَلَى شَيْءٍ. And the Christians say the Jews are not upon anything. وَهُمْ يَتْلُونَ الْكِتَابِ, while they recite the same kind of book, a revealed book. كَذَلِكَ قَالَ الَّذِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ مِثْلَ قَوْلِهِمْ. Likewise, those pagans and atheists who do not know say like what the Jews and Christians say. They also say about the religions of others that they are not valid.
So let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
The Christians, like what's said for them, for the people that came before Isa alayhi salam?
I'm not sure, to be honest with you, because it was always ambiguous to me. It's like as if the Christians don't think, what exactly was the religion of Adam? What was the religion of Noah? What was the religion of Abraham?
Right.
Though Allah tells us about Abraham, مَا كَانَ يَهُودِيًّا وَلَا نَصْرَانِيًّا. He wasn't a Jew and he wasn't a Christian. Mm-hmm. So the Jews, they were saying that Abraham was a Jew. But the Christians, were they saying Abraham was a Christian?
Right.
I don't know. How could he be a Christian, even according to their own definition?
Right.
You know what's interesting? Once some Christians wanted to give me some dawah, so I stopped to talk to them. Mm-hmm. So then when I talked to them, I said to them, well, what was the religion of Noah? Mm-hmm. So he stopped and he thought, and he said, he was a servant of God. I said, wow. MashaAllah.
It's just interesting, man.
Yeah.
وقالت
اليهود ليست النصارى على شيء. And the Jews say the Christians are not upon anything. وقالت النصارى ليست اليهود على شيء. And the Christians say the Jews are not upon anything. وَهُمْ يَتْلُونَ الْكِتَابِ, while they recite the same kind of book. So they should agree. كَذَلِكَ قَالَ الَّذِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ مِثْلَ قَوْلِهِمْ. Likewise, those pagans and atheists who do not know say like what the Jews and Christians say. That they say that the religions of others are not valid. فالله يحكم بينهم يوم القيامة فالله يحكم بينهم يوم القيامة فيما كانوا فيه يختلفون. So Allah shall judge between them on resurrection day concerning that issue of whose religion is right, about which they differ. Then those who were right, the Muslims, shall go to heaven, and those who were wrong, the non-Muslims, shall go to hell. وَمَنْ أَظْلَمُ مِمَّنْ مَنَعَ مَسَاجِدَ اللَّهِ أَنْ يُذْكَرَ فِيهَا اسْمُهُ. And who is more unjust than whoever prevents the masjids of Allah from His name being mentioned in them by inhibiting prayer and dhikr? وَسَعَى فِي خَرَابِهَا. And he strives to ruin them. This was revealed about the Romans who demolished Jerusalem, or the pagans who prevented the Muslims from performing Umrah in the year of the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. And by the way, it's interesting that, you know, you have this term, they say Judeo-Christian, like Jews and Christians are together in something. But really, if you look into history, like even the Christians used to just massacre the Jews all the time. They used to kill them. They didn't respect them or treat them as equals or anything like that. أولئك ما كان لهم أن يدخلوها إلا خائفين. Those, it is not proper that they enter them, the masjids, except in fear. Meaning, not only should they not prevent Allah's name from being mentioned in the masjids, nor should they strive to ruin them, they should not even enter them, except while afraid of the believers, let alone being in charge of them. لهم في الدنيا خزي ولهم في الآخرة عذاب عظيم. For them in the earthly life is a disgrace, of being slain in battle, captured and enslaved, and billed with the jizya. And for them in the afterlife is a great torture in the fire. وَلِلَّهِ الْمَشْرِقُ وَالْمَغْرِبِ. And to Allah belongs the east and the west. Meaning the earth entirely, since the east and the west are its two regions. فَأَيْنَمَا تُوَلُّوا فَثَمَّ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ. So whichever way you turn in voluntary prayer upon an animal while traveling, then that direction is valid to Allah. Inna Allaha wasi'un alim. Surely Allah is very generous, knowledgeable about the management of His creations. That's one way to explain this ayah. That it refers to the voluntary prayer upon an animal while traveling. Then the rule in fiqh is, at least in Shafi'i school, I don't know if the madhabs differ here, to when you want to pray the sunnah prayer and you're riding on the back of the animal, not in the seat, not a box that's like a seat compartment. Talk about literally being on the back of the animal, like you have a saddle or you don't have a saddle. Then you turn the animal towards the qibla, say your takbir, and then you turn the animal into the direction of your destination. And then you can pray on the back of that animal. And to bow, you just bend over a little bit. And to stand up, you come back the way you were before you went down. And to make sujood, you go down more. And then to sit, you come up like you were before you made sujood. And it's not a condition to put your forehead on the neck of the animal or on the saddle or anything like that. But as for being in the hodaj, which is the box that's on top of the camel, or the whole seat that's on top of the elephant, is basically like you're in a car, that chair like that, you don't have the same judgment. And it's not for an obligatory prayer. And it was also said that this is revealed about when a person is confused about the qibla. He's not able to determine his qibla because it's too cloudy or something. Then he prays in any direction. And then he'll make his prayer up later. وَقَالُوا اتَّخَذَ اللَّهُ وَلَدًا. And the Jews and Christians and those who said the angels are the daughters of Allah, they said Allah has taken on a child. Subhanah. Glory from imperfection be His. Yani far from imperfection is He. بَلْ لَهُ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Rather, to Him belongs what is in heavens and earth, while the child does not belong to the parent. كُلٌّ لَهُ قَانِتُونَ. All are to Him subjugated to His will. Yani, here, وَقَالُوا اتَّخَذَ اللَّهُ وَلَدًا. They said, Allah has taken a child. بَلْ لَهُ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Rather, instead of taking a child, everything in heavens and earth belongs to Him. So what that means is saying, the significance of that coming right after that is to say nothing of the creation is a child of His, because a parent does not own his child. That's why even if your child was a slave and then you purchased that slave from someone owned your child was a slave owned by someone. So you came and said, sell me that slave. Then just by the mere purchase, that child is free now. Because there's no way you can own your child. It's not possible. It's not valid. It wouldn't be the case for your brother, your own brother. If your brother was a slave and then you said, sell me that slave, and he sold him to you, then he's your slave. And that's the first one is the judgment for the parent too. If your parent was a slave and you purchased that slave, then by purchasing that one, they became free. That's for the parents and the children. Badi'u samawati wal ard. Creator of heavens and earth without a previous model. Yani, Badi', Allah is Al-Badi', that's one of His names. It means He's the creator. The meaning of Al-Badi' as the name of Allah is Al-Khaliq, the creator. But since it has the letters ba, dal, ain, then the language directs that to a particular meaning, which it means that he created them with no previous example. There wasn't something that they were modeled after. That's the meaning of al-badi'. It means the one who created the creation with no example before them. Yani, it's like the creation is a bid'ah, an innovated thing. So that's also like when we say Allah is al-musawwir. Al-musawwir means he's creator. But since it has the letters Sad, Waw, Ra, it means he's the one that gives things their images. وَإِذَا قَضَى أَمْرًا فَإِنَّمَا يَقُولُ لَهُ كُن فَيَكُونُ. And when he decreed a matter, he but says to it, be, and thus it is. Yani, if he decreed a matter, وَإِذَا قَضَى أَمْرًا, if he decreed a matter, if he willed for something to exist, then he says to it, kun, be, fayakun, and it is. So there's two ways to explain that. Let me see, what's this footnote here? As if he says to it, happen, and it happens. According to the Maturidis, this is an expression of the swiftness of creating, meaning the Maturidis, they said, when Allah says in the Quran, when he tells us in the Quran that he says to something, be, and it is, what he's telling us is that he creates easily and nothing prevents his creation from coming into existence at the time that he willed for it to come into existence. According to them, when Allah tells us that he says to the creation, be, this makes us understand how easy it is for Allah to create something. Because just as easy as saying be. In another ayah, Allah tells us that his creating something is like the blink of an eye. That's to express to us how easy it is. According to the Ash'aris, though, they said, this is his eternal command, which is his uncreated speech that is not a letter, sound, or language. What they're saying is, no, it doesn't mean exactly like that. It means that with his speech, that's not a language, he commands for something to come into existence eternally. And then it will come into existence at the time that he commanded for it to come into existence. So they're saying, basically, Allah, by his power, he creates. By his power, he makes something come into existence at the time he willed for it to come into existence. By his will, he makes something be one way or another. All of that happens by his knowledge and in accordance with his command. So they say he commands for it to exist. So they're saying it's literal. It doesn't mean that it's easy. They're saying it literally means that with his uncreated speech, he commanded for it to exist. And it comes into existence by his will and his power, in accordance with his command and in accordance with his knowledge. But they're saying, though, but he doesn't say the word kun, because that's created. They're saying it's just like the word Allah. The word Allah is a created word. It refers to something that's not created. Allah himself. They're saying the word kun is a created word. It refers to something that's not created, which is the speech of Allah. وَقَالَ الَّذِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ لَوْلَا يُكَلِّمُنَ اللَّهُ. And those blasphemers of Mecca, or the people of the book, who do not know, who do not practice what they know, according to Nasafi, they arrogantly said to the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, had only Allah spoken directly to us. Meaning, why does he not speak to us? Let him speak to us as he speaks to the angels and spoke to Moses. أَوْ تَأْتِينَا آيَةً. Yani, they said, had only he spoken directly to us, telling us that you are his messenger. Or a sign of our suggestion came to us. If only a sign of our suggestion came to us. And Nasafi says, this is a denial. This is their denying that any signs came to them. كذلك قال الذين من قبلهم مثل قولهم. Likewise, those of previous nations before them said to their prophets like they say, تشابهت قلوبهم. Be consoled, O Muhammad. Their hearts are alike in blasphemy and obstinacy and blindness. قد بينا الآيات لقوم يوقنون. We have indeed clarified the signs for a folk who are objective, and thus they are certain.